Good evening, Dungeon Masters, I'm Baron Durop. Critical Role's announcement of its new Daggerheart RPG to be unveiled at Gen Con this year has everyone abuzz, and in many ways the game will likely be a huge success for the Critical Role team. But will it be the heartbreaker that challenges WotC's D&D, or even Paizo's Pathfinder? With each Critical Role episode regularly racking up over 3 million views, the fandom of Critical Role is hands down the largest subgroup in the D&D community. And with that much marketing sway, any rule set Darrington Press releases, Critical Role's new publishing company, is bound to be a commercial success. If Daggerheart is released on Kickstarter, the game will likely clock over 100,000 backers, raising somewhere between $10 and $15 million. Easily placing it in the top 5 Kickstarters ever funded. Shrewd Critical Role fans will notice, however, I'm predicting a figure that's quite impressive, but only barely larger than the Legend of Vox Machina's $11 million Kickstarter. And there's a good reason for that. Darrington Press will also be releasing a second RPG, a dice pool game called Illuminated Worlds, effectively competing with their own product, and therefore fracturing the fanbase across 2 games. But even if all their fans ravenously purchase both game systems, the fans who think Daggerheart will be able to directly compete with Wizards of the Coast are in for a rude awakening. The likelihood of a $15 million Kickstarter is nothing to sneeze at, but being able to go toe-to-toe with WotC's brand awareness campaigns and bid on shelf space in big box retailers like Walmart, Target, or Barnes & Noble, where WotC dominates physical market presence, Darrington Press is going to need a lot more than whatever's left over from even the highest ever funding Kickstarter. To be clear, Wizards of the Coast has the capital to throw $350 million into a fire on a brand awareness movie, already has deep market penetration and relationships with those big box retailers, and will have no problem outbidding a small indie publisher like Darrington Press for shelf space and virtual AdSense inventory. After paying for taxes, marketing, and production expenses, Darrington Press would absolutely need to secure venture capital funding or business loans to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, all at an ever-increasing interest rate, and all while the liquid capital startups have had easy access to since the end of the Cold War is now shifting into treasury bills and out of the stock market due to the looming recession. To be clear, that's an amount of money that even Critical Role's angel investor, former NSA agent and current military arms dealer Mark Coro can't even afford. Regardless, even if Darrington Press could secure enough funding to go mano a mano with Wizards of the Coast in marketing, they would also have to compete for physical production time. There are very few printing facilities around the globe with the capacity to output printed material at the level required to stand up against Wizards of the Coast, and most of them are in China. I'll detail why in my next video about why this reality is troublesome enough for Wizards of the Coast. But when geopolitical issues finally boil over in the South China Sea, anyone who needs printed material at that kind of scale will be lining up at the few remaining facilities in Costa Rica and in Lithuania, all bidding to get to the front of the line, further putting that scale of production out of reach for Darrington Press. Just for the sake of argument, let's assume that Critical Role does plan to go head-to-head with Wizards of the Coast, somehow manages to secure enough funding to do so, and lands an affordable contract with a printing company who can output at that scale. There's still one massive problem. As stated at the beginning of the video, Critical Role has over 3 million fans, an utterly impressive number. Their fans are so legion it's very likely that any given D&D group in the English-speaking world with players under the age of 40 has at least one of them. But the devotion of their fandom is a double-edged sword. There is a very small but obnoxiously vocal minority among their fans who have soured the reputation of the critter fandom at large. Of Critical Role's 3 million fans, this small segment is likely only encompassing around 80,000 or so people, coincidentally the same number of people who back the Vox Machina animation project. But this 2.5% of the fan base is outrageous outright vitriolic. They have developed a reputation for peeling back whatever layers of drama they can stir up within the community, worship the pipes that Matt Mercer's piss flows through, and views any statement about Critical Role that isn't overwhelmingly beaming with positivity as a personal existential attack. In a video I posted shortly before the release of Critical Role's animated series, I wrongly predicted that their animation project wouldn't be as successful as the fans had hoped, specifically because I failed to recognize just how nostalgic the animation would be for the hardcore fans who grew up on the anime and video games that the Critical Role cast voice acted. That older video was intended to be an exploration of why Harmon Quest failed to be as popular as Critical Role despite budget and celebrity draw, but according to the comments section, the video might as well have been an outright attack on the collective childhood of younger millennial anime fans, even dismissing the handful of death threat emails and dozens of 1,500 word long comments pedantically describing why I was a terrible person for even discussing the topic. My favorite comment from that video was from a critter who vented frustration that the YouTube platform had just changed such that they couldn't see the like to dislike ratio on YouTube videos anymore. They wanted the satisfaction of knowing just how strongly they were standing in solidarity with their fellow fans against me and in support of Matt Mercer. And it's no secret the regular people, including mainline Critical Role fans, have had this kind of experience with this segment of the fan base. Therefore, even though there's a 20% chance of at least one critter playing D&D at every game table across the globe, there are far more people who are fed up with this kind of antisocial behavior that will have an association with this new game. Especially since the WotC OGL fiasco, and even more so since the Pinkerton vs. Magic the Gathering YouTuber debacle, players are becoming rapidly less resistant to trying a new game system besides 5e. However, if they aren't Critical Role fans, experimental game hoppers will absolutely take into consideration the toxicity of this small percentage of the fanbase as a reason to not pick up Daggerheart. They won't want to trade games produced by a toxic company for one that's played by a toxic fanbase. Furthermore, the vast bulk of Critical Role fans are not dungeon masters who would be in a position to ask their players to switch to this new game system anyway, even if they wanted to deal with the Matt Mercer effect. I've spoken with many gaming companies who have sponsored the Critical Role stream, which have also discussed sponsoring my own content, and many of the ones who sell dungeon mastering tools have all independently agreed that sponsoring Critical Role was not cost-effective for their marketing. Their retrospectives always ring the same. The audience that watches Critical Role, while it absolutely has dungeon masters within it, is far more full of D&D players, and even more made up of people who simply like the idea of playing D&D, and not actually doing so. With all that said, Daggerheart would be a massive Kickstarter success, and will likely sell over 100,000 units in its first month, but even 250,000 units does not make a dent in WotC's marketing profile, and likely won't have the staying power that Paizo has with Pathfinder. It's likely those 100,000 copies of Daggerheart, while cherished by the community, will just sit on the shelf right next to other highly esteemed dust collectors like Fate Core and Burning Wheel, while the rest of the group continues to play 5e. If you'd like to help me make more content like this in the future, please consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a channel member. Thanks for watching, Dungeon Masters, and until next time, good night.